protecting women who are disproportionately victims of gun violence.
These monsters are getting out on bail and killing women. That's on this Liberal government, no matter what they say.
Good afternoon, everybody. Tanya is really under the weather, so I'm flying solo today, but Sean Fraser is proven wrong not once, but twice in question period, and Rachel Dancho goes beast mode on the Minister of Justice and Attorney General, Arif Virani. Let's take a look.
Oral questions. Question orale. The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
They say weak men create hard times, and this week Prime Minister's inflationary deficits gave Canadians the worst standard of living in over 40 years. The Finance Minister promised one of her fiscal guardrails would not be going over her deficit, which is $40 billion. In fact, the PBO said she blew right past it. Simple question, what's the deficit?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague.
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what my honourable colleague fails to point out is that Canada is projected to have the fastest growing economy in the G7 next year. He fails to point out that we are creating jobs at a near record pace. He doesn't understand that wages are increasing faster than inflation. His strategy for the economy is to make cuts to the programs that are supporting people, cuts to the programs that are building houses. He's opposing, ironically, the tax cut that would deliver relief to families over the holidays. We're going to focus on growing the economy in a way that works for everyone, not the Conservative approach to cut the supports that families need.
Okay, Sean. So this is actually going to the heart of one of our recent videos where we talk about GDP per capita. And this is where Jasraj Singh Halan is talking about the worst standard of living in over 40 years. That's the record that Canada is on target for meeting. And it's because Canadians are getting less and less and less of a piece of the overall pie that is our GDP. So Sean Fraser's response to this is, oh, but you're against the GST tax. And, oh, don't worry, next year our economy is going to be great. Well, you guys keep saying that, and it never comes true. You want to say next year so you can try to lie to Canadians and get elected in some way? Yeah, I don't think so. And as for this GST holiday, it's already been proven that this isn't actually going to do what you want. You also, you have Nick Nanos and every single media personality out there saying, this is bad.
You know, the Liberals are trailing the Conservatives by 18 points. Like, if they think a tax holiday for 60 days is going to make a material difference in how people feel about the Liberals, I think they're sadly mistaken. And people will see this as a ploy for a government that looks like it's on its last legs trying to hold on to power. And I don't know how a self-described progressive government justifies giving people who are making $100,000 to $150,000 the $250 check, which won't mean anything to them, and then to not have something for Canadians who are unemployed or who are on poverty and stuff like that. So this is straight up sad, crass, and epically bad politics.
Even David Dodge, former governor of Bank of Canada, he's like, this is ridiculous. It's a trick. It's a gimmick. So nobody believes you. And if you really want to look at something that Sean Fraser posted, he posted this on his Twitter. Now, this is a graph where he's trying to convince everybody purpose-built housing and construction has been increasing since 2013. And if you look here, he's showing it increasing through COVID. How is that possible when everything was shut down? So the fact that he's posting this graph completely indicts his claim that this has been increasing this much and that this is the number. It's complete garbage. Nothing was happening in 2020 and nobody believes you.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
He could have just said he doesn't know, like he doesn't know where the million people he lost went. And even this number-challenged Prime Minister admits every new dollar of his handouts make his inflationary deficits worse. He says he's going to leave the economy to the bankers, that he doesn't think about monetary policy. And he said budgets balance themselves. It's the same incompetence that made Canadians bank broke, building broke, and belly broke. Canadians want to know how broken the Liberal deficit is. What's the number?
Way to go, Jack!
The honourable minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
My honourable colleague seems to have a penchant for alliteration and personal insults, but what he lacks is an ability to advance policies that will grow the economy or actually help people in need. Mr. Speaker, at every opportunity, they oppose the investments that are creating jobs in this country. They oppose the investments that are building homes in this country, and they oppose the measures that are going to provide tax cuts to middle-class families, to low-income families, to workers in this country. For once, I wish we could have a debate about the issues instead of stooping to these lows where they throw insults instead of advancing policies that help real people.
Right, because stooping to ask what the actual deficit is of the federal budget, yeah, that's stooping. Because Canadians don't care about how much money you're printing. Canadians don't care about the billions, or should I say tens of billions of dollars you're borrowing to pay for all of these programs, to pay for your vote buying crap. Canadians aren't concerned about that because it's not like their kids and their grandkids and their great-grandkids are going to be paying for this in their taxes for the next 150 years. Oh, wait, no, that is it. That's exactly why they're concerned.
The honourable member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Here's a common sense policy that common sense Conservatives will bring in when his constituents fire him after the next election.
Yeah.
We're going to axe the tax for good for everyone. And these deficits that this Prime Minister keeps making sent over 2 million Canadians into a food bank in a single month, made 1 in 4 Canadians skip meals, and sent 1 in 5 kids into poverty. But the Finance Minister said all of them are just feeling a vibe session. Look, if she's not going to release her economic statement, will she at least tell Canadians how bad she's going to blow through her deficit?
Yeah, way to go, Jack!
The honourable minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
I'd like to remind that member that the last time that Conservatives were in government, more than 16% of kids were living in poverty, over 1 million children. Since we've come into government, Mr. Speaker, we've lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty through measures like the Canada Child Benefit, supporting families each and every month with up to over $700.
So this is gross that the Liberals are still trying to rely on the fact that they gave all this money to people during COVID, which was the CERB payout, and that's the number they're using when they say we've lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. So here's the thing. So she just actually screwed herself. She's saying, well, when the Conservatives were in power, 16% of kids were in poverty. Well, if the number is 1 in 5 and 1 in 4, well, guess what? That number is up to 20 or 25%. Suds, are you not double checking your numbers before you open your mouth? Because you literally just owned yourself in the face.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are feeling squeezed. A new report says a family of 4 can expect to pay $800 more in food in 2025. While grocery CEOs are getting richer, workers are scrambling to put food on the table. Liberals let people down. And the Conservatives, they want tax breaks for CEOs, leaving Canadians paying more for everything. Billionaires don't need relief. The working class does. Will the Liberals permanently remove the GST off of life essentials so that families can get a break?
Hear, hear, hear.
So, wait a minute. The NDP has voted for the carbon tax increase every single time it's come up. And the carbon tax is going up again next year. And a new report comes out saying that families are going to be paying $800 more next year. And you're surprised that this is causing grocery prices to go up? Like, the funny thing about the NDP is they think that corporations caring about profits is a recent thing. Like, I hope none of them are part of any businesses or boards where they're actually accountable to their shareholders for making a profit, because this isn't new. So for you to say that all of a sudden grocery chains have, had CEOs and boards that actually care about profit, that's beyond ridiculous. What is also ridiculous is that you can actually see, and we've done videos on this, where the grocery chain profit margin on groceries has stayed relatively static. It's at around 5%. But again, what they are relying on is these quote-unquote record profits, because all of the grocery chains saw that, hey, you know what? There's a big business in drugs. There's a big business in makeup, and there's a big business in child cold medicine, because everyone is freaking out about it and everybody was panic buying after the pandemic. So they went and started buying these pharmacies like Shoppers Drug Mart and Rexall and the rest of it. So that is now on their balance sheet as making record revenue. And they are very profitable items because they're not subject to the same profit margins that food is. So this is what it comes down to. And the NDP have the gall to stand up and say, oh, but it's the Liberals' fault. You've been right there with them since COVID.
Structure and communities.
We know that life is expensive, Mr. Speaker, and we want to deliver a break to Canadians. We know that the cost of food has gone too high, which is why we want to remove tax over the holidays. The irony is the Conservatives make the same attack, but they are opposing a tax cut on food for families. Right. Mr. Speaker, I should plan as well the idea that we've got an important stakeholder in Ottawa advocating for a national school food program this week. Her name is Molly. She is an 8-year-old in grade 3 at A.G. Bailey in Nova Scotia, and we're going to provide not only a tax cut on food, but a national school food program, so she and her classmates will be able to enjoy a healthy meal every day of the year.
Leave it to the Liberals to politicize children, and leave it to them to use children as political footballs and political props. And you saw Fraser at the end probably blow a kiss to this girl. I hope it was his kids, because if it was this girl, then that's disgraceful and a little creepy, just saying. But again, what are you talking about? The school food program isn't even law, yet you're talking about it like it's in full swing. Even the president of the Treasury Board, Anita Anand, was talking about this and saying, oh, well, it's going to be great because we're putting money into the fall economic statement and the supplementary estimates for the school food program. Nobody is going to get anything because it is not law yet. So how are you even going to be spending anything? It hasn't passed the House, never mind the Senate, and the Senate can't get anything done right now. And it's Liberal control. That's the crazy part. And the last part is that Sean Fraser is talking about kids getting healthy food, but them giving a tax break to Canadians on groceries. You're giving a tax break on things like potato chips, like cookies, like candy, jubes, non-healthy things, because all the healthy stuff, guess what? It already has no tax on it.
The honourable member for Foothills.
The NDP Liberal Carbon Tax Coalition is delivering Canadians a Christmas nightmare. Canada's Food Price Index report showed that, on average, Canadians will spend $800 more on groceries this year. The Prime Minister's carbon tax is making a dire situation even worse. The number of food bank visits in Toronto are up 1 million people to 3.5 million visits, a 43% increase in new food bank users. Scurvy is on the rise. Food insecurity has surged more than 20%. All Canadians want for Christmas is a carbon tax election. When will this Prime Minister make that Christmas wish come true?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Let's get serious, Mr. Speaker. The very report that the member opposite...
Order. Order. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary from the top, please.
Let's get serious, Mr. Speaker. The very report that the members opposite site says that climate change is the greatest driver of food price inflation. It's the same thing Sylvain Charlebois said when he came to committee recently, and the Conservatives have no plan to fight climate change. In addition, we stepped up over the holidays to offer Canadians a GST tax cut. What did the Conservatives do? They opposed. When we step up to help children across Canada get food at school, what do the Conservatives do? They oppose. You want to make Canadians Canadians a Merry Christmas? Step up.
Ladies and gentlemen, the NP for Whitby, Mr. Ryan Turnbull. Sit down, Turnbull, before you hurt yourself. Like, oh my goodness. Like, Liberals, aren't you embarrassed to have somebody up there that can barely even speak? His scripted response? Like, let's get serious. And, you know, the entire Conservative caucus laughed at him twice. First you talk about climate change, then you're like, but we're going to give them off 10 cents a bag of chips, and it's going to, you know, save them around $100 over the course of these 2 months. They should be thanking us. Okay, if that's the narrative you want to run with, be my guest.
The honourable member for Foothills.
Well, I guess it would take a Festivus miracle to have a serious Prime Minister who understands that when you increase taxes on farmers who grows the food, truckers who move the food, you increase costs of the food. But after 9 years of this NDP Liberal government, this is the Christmas list Canadians face. Grocery prices up $800. Price of food inflation is up 36% higher in Canada than the United States. A quarter of Canadians are skipping meals. When will this Prime Minister grant a common sense Christmas gift to Canadians and call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Order. The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to quote Mac Levesque, Chief of Security at TD Bank, and he says, I quote, "Okay, enough. This is an outright lie, and I'm not in the habit of calling people liars. The report he's referring to does not mention that the carbon tax is a factor behind the $800 increase, and certainly does not say that carbon tax will cost families $800 more on food." That's coming from the Chief Security Officer at TD Bank, Mr. Speaker.
Money launderer, thanks. Order. The honourable member.
So this is rich that Stephen Guilbeault is standing up and calling the Conservatives liars for saying that the carbon tax is increasing price on food. And then you heard where the Conservatives yell at this from the money launderer.
For Miramichi Grand Lake.
Under this Prime Minister, New Brunswickers continue to struggle and will now have to pay $800 more for food next year. After 9 years, the NDP Liberal carbon tax has caused the price of groceries to skyrocket. According to Food Bank Canada, the number of people accessing food banks increased by 73% the last 2 years. Over 1 million Ontarians are relying on food banks. That's more people that live in my home province. Canadians deserve better. Will the Prime Minister agree that now is the time to call a carbon tax election?
The Honourable Minister for Families, Children and Social Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A reminder that that member and all of the Conservatives have had an opportunity to support the work that we're doing to provide relief to families in New Brunswick and across the country.
This is where the Liberals are disgusting, because they're saying, oh, but if you just support all of the terrible policies that we're putting in, you're going to make it better. If you support all the terrible policies that actually cause this problem in the first place, you're going to make it better. No.
The honourable member. Grand Lake.
Mr. Speaker, not a single plate of food has been served, and 1.4 million Canadian children are living in poverty. The rise in the cost of food is a direct result of the carbon tax. The Prime Minister doesn't understand. If you tax the farmer that grows the food and the trucker that ships it, you end up taxing the family that buys it. Already the NDP Liberal carbon tax has resulted in food prices increasing 36% faster in Canada than across the border. Will the Prime Minister finally give Canadians the carbon tax election now?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, just because a Conservative member of Parliament makes something up doesn't mean that it's true. The Minister of the Environment has quoted the actual report that says specifically that the price on pollution is not responsible for the increase in food prices. But if the Conservatives were honest with Canadians and wanted to actually do something to help them with the high cost of food over the holidays, they could support our GST tax break for Canadians that is taking the GST off of essential items, including groceries, Mr. Speaker. If they were honest with Canadians, they would support the school food program that is feeding 184,000 kids. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The level of gaslighting that is going on from the Liberals just reaches new levels every day. So they will have you believe that every problem that is going on in Canada, they've had nothing to do with the cause at all. On the contrary, all of this just happened around them. It was the world causing these problems, not the Liberal policies. And they will then have you believe, but all of our policies are actually fixing things. That's the only reason that inflation has come down. What? So if we take you at your word, then you've literally done nothing and been asleep at the wheel for half of your time in government, and only now you've woken up? Either way you spin this, it's reprehensible that you've been in government, and all of you should be fired.
The Honourable Member for Cumberland Colchester.
Speaker, as we approach Christmas, there is no joy. A recent study shows that more than 21% of Nova Scotia households were food insecure in 2022, which is a 17% year-over-year increase. And about 1/5 of those people who are food insecure seek help through services like food banks. As a result, food bank use in Nova Scotia has skyrocketed. Food bank leaders say it's a perfect storm between the rising cost of living, unaffordable housing, and inadequate income. Will the Prime Minister call a carbon tax election today so that Nova Scotians can feed themselves with dignity?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Food insecurity is a very serious issue, including in my home province of Nova Scotia. But, Mr. Speaker, it's hard to take seriously the question from the Conservative Party members when they are literally opposing a tax cut on food. This holiday season, we are putting a GST holiday in place to reduce the cost of food that people buy, including when they go out to eat at restaurants, including products that are not exempt at grocery stores. Mr. Speaker, I hope the Honourable Member will put his money where his mouth is and for once support a measure that is going to deliver meaningful financial relief to families in need.
So we don't want to minimize the fact that every dollar saved is helpful to Canadians. But for the Liberals to come out and say that about $100 over 2 months is meaningful financial relief, like, I don't even know what to say anymore about these guys. And the fact that Sean Fraser is getting up and he's talking about this stuff, oh, well, you know, we're giving them a tax break on food, trying to imply that all food was taxed before. So the fact that they're getting up and they're spreading this disinformation, remember, misinformation, accidental, disinformation, deliberate. So the fact that they're doing this, it's appalling. It is absolutely appalling. It's not surprising, but it's appalling. So Nova Scotians, take note.
The Honourable Member from Cumberland Colchester.
Well, Speaker, I suggest that member opposite go to the grocery store now again, because essentials, grocery essentials, are already GST exempt, and the temporary tax trickery on foods such as sugary and salty foods and coated candy, popcorn, beer, and ready-to-drink alcoholic drinks are certainly not going to help food insecurity on behalf of any Canadians. And we continue to see that accessing food banks has increased 73%, and now more than 1 million Ontarians are visiting food banks, which is 6 times the population of Prince Edward Island. Canadians need relief. Will they have a carbon tax election now?
And this is what happens when you have a guy like Stephen Fraser who thinks he has a clever mouth, but it just comes out as blatant lies and misinformation and disinformation. And then you have somebody like Dr. Stephen Ellis. And I repeat, Dr. Stephen Ellis, who is very educated, very intelligent, and has no time for BS when he hears it.
It is absolutely clear my honourable colleague was not listening to the answer to his first question before he delivered his second. I said specifically that we are exempting tax on food that is not already exempted from the GST, including food that people may purchase at a restaurant. Mr. Speaker, what's interesting is the Conservatives are opposed not just to the tax cut on holiday gifts, toys for kids, clothing for kids, diapers, car seats, and food. They oppose the measures we put in place to reduce the cost of living when we cut taxes for the middle class, when we stop sending childcare checks to millionaires so we can put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 Canadian families. They just don't care about people. It's all politics.
The party that is raising taxes on literally everyone multiple times is saying that it's the Conservatives that they just don't care. And the Conservatives voted against our affordability measures. Liberals, here's a tip for you. Whenever you think you have an affordability measure, please forget it, because anything you do, and I mean anything, breaks this country and damages it. We said the other day, they could have literally done nothing and gotten paid to do it, and Canada would have been far better off. What does that say about this government?
The honourable member for Kildonan, St. Paul.
Mr. Speaker, last week the people of Toronto were shocked to see a man attempt a violent carjacking, shooting up cars all over the 401. And it's not just Toronto. Gun violence is up 116% under this Liberal government. In fact, it's the 9th consecutive year that gun violence has increased in this country. And what are the Liberals doing today, Mr. Speaker? Another announcement, but not targeting the criminals on the 401. No, targeting turkey hunters and sport shooters and trained, tested, and vetted law-abiding Canadians. When are they going to realize that gun violence is only going to stop when they go after the criminals responsible for gun violence?
I've said it before, and I will keep saying this. Am I in favor of purchasing guns? No. But I'm not against Canadians purchasing guns. I don't frankly understand it, but here's the thing. I'm a data-driven person. So when we look at gun violence in Canada, what does the data say? Does the data say that the gun violence is being caused by law-abiding Canadians, by accidental firearm discharges? No, that is not what the data says. But yet what the Liberals have done is they've said, oh, gun violence is going up, so let's take guns away and ban guns from law-abiding Canadians. No, sorry, that's a cop-out. That's actually attacking law-abiding Canadians just to say you're doing something. And let's just follow the logic. So if this is what it is, okay, Liberals, you've said that the problem is guns that are in the hands of law-abiding Canadians. Okay, so if that is the case, you've implemented legislation that bans guns, you've implemented legislation that allegedly takes them away. So how can you explain that gun violence is increasing every single year? Could it be because you're actually allowing violent criminals not to stay in jail? Could it be that it's because you're actually giving them bail? So the minute they leave the courthouse, they can go and carjack somebody at gunpoint? Maybe that's the reason. Gee, imagine that. And this is from the Liberals who say, well, we follow the science. How about you follow the data? But no, you don't want to do that because that would admit that there's something wrong with your ideology. And this is the danger, folks, when you have a party that rules a country with an ideology instead of good policy.
Order. the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And it's quite shameful on the anniversary of one of the largest mass shootings targeting women in this country. The Conservatives seem to be more concerned about keeping guns on the street that are designed for the battlefield. Mr. Speaker, we are not going after hunters or sport shooters. What we're doing is we're protecting our communities. In particular, we're protecting women who are disproportionately victims of gun violence. While Conservatives work for the gun lobby, we serve Canadians in keeping them safe.
Order. Order. The Honourable Member for Kildonan, St. Paul.
This Liberal government has no credibility when it comes to protecting women. In the 9 years they've been in power, sexual assaults have increased 75%. 94 municipalities and the province of Nova Scotia have declared intimate partner violence as an epidemic. In Canada, Mr. Speaker, one woman in Peel region is strangled to death every single day, and violent abusers of women are getting let out on bail easier than ever because of the Liberal Bill C-75. There's only one party in this place that's going to protect women from the monsters who abuse them, that's going to put criminals of gun violence behind bars, and that's the Conservative Party, Mr. Speaker. Win through the general election.
This is what happens when feelings comes up against facts. Because the Liberals have been the ones in power for the last 10 years, and all of these rates have skyrocketed. And they're going to turn around and say, oh, well, you know, we're the ones that actually care about crime. We're the ones that actually care about women. But you've done nothing but implement policies that have caused these to go up. Guess what happens when you're in government? You get to take credit for all the good things that have happened, although there's not many under the Liberal government. But you also have to take credit for all of the bad things that happen as well. And I love that Dancho just like tossed her paper down, her clipboard down, and she just went beast mode on Boohoo O'Connell over there. Well, O'Connell is going to be boohooing into her napkin on election night when she doesn't win her seat.
The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, our track record on protecting women from violence, from violent firearms, speaks for itself with respect to assault rifles, with respect to handguns. What I find actually quite appalling is that party's ability to stand up and talk about what women want in this chamber. Because when today, Barbara Lavers at the Justice Committee said on Bill C-63, we must work together as communities, families, and governments to reduce the online abuse of our children. Social media platforms must be held accountable. They must help keep our children safe. Children like Harry are dying. Her son is dead because of online safety issues that party opposes. That's unconscionable.
The statistics on women speak for themselves. 75% increase of sexual assaults. 75% increase since they've been in power. Sexual violations against children up 120%. And why is this? We've heard from Status of Women Committee over and over from abused women. It's Bill C-75. These monsters are getting out on bail and killing women. That's on this Liberal government, no matter what they say. Their announcement today will not protect a single woman in this country, Mr. Speaker. When are they going to call an election so that Conservatives can get in power and do something about it?
And I'm not even going to let the Liberals respond to that because, I honestly don't know how people believe what the Liberals are saying. I don't get it. Is it because the mainstream media isn't reporting the statistics enough? I don't know. This is the party that's allegedly the feminist party. But you hear the statistics and it's shocking. They have failed women more than probably any other party in the history of Canada. And it's because of one bill. But because the government would rather not acknowledge and fix its mistakes and just rely on, well, you know, we're doing stuff and we're just going to ignore it and then try and shame the Conservatives. You have no argument. All of these stats have gone up under your watch. 10 years. You have nothing to indict the Conservatives with. So why don't you just accept what's happened and get out of the way, because you're obviously not going to fix it. The Conservatives actually have a plan to deal with it. And imagine this. The plan is, let's put it back to the way it was before, when crime rate took a historic dive under the Conservative government. How about that? And a message to the Conservatives. I implore you, if you put in a piece of legislation and it makes things a lot worse in any capacity, in any sector, maybe you acknowledge, you know what? That bill didn't have the intended consequences that we wanted, so we're going to reverse it and then work on one that does, because we don't want to make things worse. We want to make things better. So we would rather acknowledge our mistake and then go and fix it. You know what that's called? That's called credibility. When you make a mistake, you own it, but more importantly, you fix it.